We're now up to Daf Kuf Dalid Amid Beis. And the question is whether we accept Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananya. Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananya, if you remember, encouraged us to integrate two themes into the Chasimas HaBroch at the end of Havdalah, the themes that Rav Lishitaso had emphasized and Shmuel Lishitaso, Rav emphasizing Makadesh Yisrael, and Shmuel emphasizing Hamavdu ben Kodesh L'chol. Let's integrate them both. And the Gemara says, "Less hilchos kavaseh." We have a principle, a fundamental principle in Hilchos Brachos, that every bracha should have in its chasima one single theme. We don't combine two different themes in a bracha. Now, you might ask the following question, and this has bothered me on some occasions. When we speak about Rosh Hashanah, we say Baruch Atah Hashem. We say, I'm going to skip a few words deliberately. We say Makadesh Yisrael V'Yom HaZikara. That's fine. That's typical of any chasima for the Shalosh Regalim. Makadesh Yisrael V'Azmanim. You sanctify it at Kal Yisrael so that we, in turn, can sanctify the Zman. But I skipped a few words. Baruch Atah Hashem, and then we say Melech al Kol Haaretz, Makadesh Yisrael V'Yom HaZikara. Now, Melech al Kol Haaretz is a separate theme of Malchus Hashem. So my Rebbe, Rav Soloveitchik, used to say in the name of his grandfather, Rav Chaim, that they're not two themes. That what is the Kiddush of Yom HaZikaron? It's Malchus. The Melech, the Malchus of Hashem, is the very essence of the sanctity and the meaning of Rosh Hashanah. It's Malchus. And if you accept Reb Chaim, then it could very well be that if you left out the words Melech al Kol Haaretz, you would not Yotzei the mitzvah. But just the methodology is that whenever you seem to think or believe that there are two different themes in a bracha, you have to somehow integrate them into one. So getting back to Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, perhaps he was very well aware of this principle that we're ein chotz mibracha b'shnei inyonim. But here he felt Makadesh Yisrael, Umavdil ben Kodesh L'chol is really one theme, because the Havdalah ben Kodesh L'chol is only relevant to Klal Yisrael. So if not for the sanctity of Klal Yisrael, there would be no Havdalah between Kodesh L'chol. From a divine perspective, before the creation of Klal Yisrael, everything is Kodesh. L'Hashem ha'aretz u'maloah. It all belongs to God. But after creation, we have a special Kedusha that separates between Chol and Kodesh, and God created that Kedusha in Klal Yisrael. So the Havdalah between Kodesh and Chol is just another expression or manifestation of the Kedusha of Yisrael. But the Gemara says, less hilchos kavaseh, because we're going to define this as two separate themes. Ula ikla l'pumpedisa, on one particular Motzi Shabbos, Ula found himself in Pumpedisa. Amalei Rav Yehuda, the Rav Yitzchak Brei. Now Ula was from the older generation. He was considered the giant. The younger generation wanted to see what Ula would do on any issue. How is he knowing? So Rav Yehuda speaks to his son, Rav Yitzchak, and he commissions him. He says, it's Motzei Shabbos. Make sure that he's about to make Havdalah. How do you guarantee that he's about to make Havdalah? Zil amtile kalkola de peri. Bring him a basket full of fruits. He's not going to eat the fruits until he makes Havdalah. The fruits are very beautiful, they're very attractive. So you'll be able to listen to his Havdalah. V'chazi hechi avdi. And you'll be able to return to me, your father, and tell me exactly how Ula recited Havdalah. What was Ula's nusach? Now, I'll just mention to you quickly the Maram Chalava says on this Gemara, Kavan Sheyirtza Lechel Min HaPeiros Yavdil Trei Asa Lechel Lifnei Havdalah Alakos. This was his way, his ploy of encouraging Ula to recite Havdalah, so that Rabbi Yitzchak, his son, would, not Ula's son, but I mean to say Rabbi Yehuda's son, would hear the Havdalah of Ula and then report back. This is what we call Shimush Talmidei Chacham. Lo Azil. I'm not exactly sure why, but Rabbi Yitzchak decided that he's not going to bother with this, even though his father had commanded him to do so, and he sent a shliach. Shodalei Abai. He sent Abai as a representative. And Kiyasa Abai, when Abai came back after going to Ula, Amalei, so Rabbi Yitzchak, he wants to report back to his father, so he says, Hechi Omar, how did Ula recite Havdalah? Amalei, so Abai responded, Baruch Hamavdu Ben Kodesh L'chol. In other words, he was knowing like Shmuel and makpid on one theme. There's no chasim with two inyanim. Omar, and that's the way Ula said the Sulo. And Ula did not add any extra havdalos. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's more than that. Because the Gemara is going to take this up in a few minutes, that he recited Baruch HaMavdil Bein Kodesh L'chol. That was it. There was no Baruch. There was no Chasima. You may know that in Shulchan Aruch it says that if you have to do Malacha Motzi Shabbos and you don't have a possibility of reciting a dol, you say Baruch Hamavdu Ben Kodesh L'chol. And that's what Ula apparently did every Motzi Shabbos. Baruch Hamavdu Ben Kodesh L'chol. That was his Avdol. The Sulo, nothing more than that. Also, L'kami Davur. Now Rabbi Yitzchak knows exactly what Ula's Havdalah was all about. He comes to his father, Rabbi Yehuda, and his father immediately drills him. Amalei Hechi Omar. What did you hear from him? Now Rabbi Yitzchak is not going to lie to his father. Amalei Anolo Asi. I myself didn't go, but Anosh Darte Labai. I sent Abai as my shliach. The Amalini told me that Ula's Havdalah consisted of the following words: Baruch Hamavdu Ben Kodesh L'chol. And now the father gets a little bit upset with his son. Amar Lei, he says to him, meaning, why didn't you go yourself when I sent you on the shlichus? And Rav Venusa Demar, who Sraruse Demar, Garmale Lemar Delotema Shmaita Mikume. So let's try to understand. Rav Venuta is a lashon of picking yourself up, lifting yourself up above others, otherwise known as gaiva. And Sraruse is srara. In Aramaic, it's written with a samach. In Lashon Kodesh, it's written with a sin. Srara means, this is above my. This is below my status, my dignity. I'm not going to go myself. I'll send Abai. I assume Abai was a younger upstart at that time. And Rav Yehuda says to his son, you should know, because of that gaiva and that sraga, that you didn't want to go yourself, the halacha will never be said in your name. We have a principle that we say the halacha in the name of the person, even if that person is not the originator, but he will quote somebody earlier. So we're going to always say that Abai says in the name of Ula, Baruch Hamavdu Ben Kodesh L'chol, your name will not be mentioned. If Sarito es haschus sheyu sifsosecha dovros bekever, the Gemara says in Yevamos that whenever a halacha is said in the name of someone, then it's as if his mouth moves even after, posthumously after he's dead. And we see from this Maisa that even though you're only quoting what you saw or heard, that also is Sfas of Dovros Bekem. And we also prove from this Gemara on the side, totally different issue, that a father could refer to his own son as Mar. Mar means my master, so because that's how Rabbi Yehuda referred to his son, and that's not considered a pchisus hakavod to the father. So it's really interesting. Even though Rabbi Yehuda gets angry at his son, he still calls him by the name Mar, showing his covet for his son. And maybe that's how we discipline our children. If we have to discipline them, we have to at the same time respect them. It's got to be both, a combination of discipline and respect, somehow integrated together. And then you're giving tochach out of love, and your criticism is accepted as something that is given by someone who loves you, not just to come down hard on you and tell you you're not worthy. So Rabbi Yehuda, when he criticizes his son Rabbi Yitzchak, and he's giving him stark musar here by telling him that you acted like a Baal Gaiva, but nevertheless he calls him Mar. It's a whole different kind of thing. Meisvei, the Gemara says that they asked the kash from a brisa. Now, this long brisa that we're going to study now is all a kash on Ula, because it's going to indicate that a bracha has to have a structure. It's got to have a psicha, it's got to have a chasima. You can't just say Baruch Hamavdu Ben Kodesh L'chol. Kol habrachas kulon poseach bebaruch v'chosein ben bebaruch. Every bracha has to open with a baruch and end with an extra baruch, except for the following cases. Now, when it says that Ula said Baruch Hamad Ben Kodesh L'chol, we have another principle which is not even mentioned here in this Gemara. It's the most fundamental, the ABC principle of brachos, that Kol Bracha She'eni Ma'Shemu Malchus La Brach. So it must be that what Ula recited was Baruch Atah Hashem L'keinu Melech Olam Hamavdil Ben Kodesh L'chol. And that's what we call, now going on to another topic, even though you had Shemu Malchus, it's called a bracha kitzara, because it doesn't have both a psicha and a chasima. So if you have one straight bracha without a chasima to it, that's called a bracha kitzara. And the Gemara thinks that Hamavdi, that Havdalah should not be a bracha kitzara, it should be a bracha arucha. What defines a bracha arucha? It's not a matter of counting letters or words. Bracha arucha means a bracha that starts with the baruch and ends with the baruch. And the Gemara believes that Havdalah fits into that pattern. And almost every bracha should fit into that pattern, with the exception of the following brachas. Chutz mi birchas ha-mitzvos, u-birchas ha-peros, u-bracha ha-smucha l'chavrta. And then we'll talk about the last bracha of Kriyat Shema. So we have basically three categories of the exceptions to the rule. In these three categories, we're going to have a bracha kitzara without any extra chasim. First, birchas ha-mitzvahs and birchas ha-nenu. We have asher kitzonim mitzvos v'tzivonu l'sa'ate petzitzis, or al natilas yadayim, al natilas lulav. And then we have birchas ha-peros, appropriates, there's no chasima. Then we have another reason why sometimes we drop the psicha, we only have a chasima. That's going to be a bracha smucha l'chavrta. For example, every bracha of Kriyat Shema, of Shmon Esrei, is a bracha smucha l'chavrta, and it doesn't open up with a baruch, it just ends with a baruch. And the last bracha of Kriyat Shema, which is called emes v'yatziv, in Shachris, is with regard to that bracha, or emes v'amuna and arvis, we have no psicha. There's no opening. And this also seems to be a reflection of bracha smuchal chavita. The question is, what was the chiddush here mentioning Kriyat Shema? So you're going to have to say that the chiddush here is that you can have a bracha smuchal chavita even if they are separated by a recitation in the middle, as long as that recitation is not a hefsek. So the bracha of emes v'yatziv, which ends with Gol Yisrael, is smuchal chavita. Doesn't start with an opening baruch because it goes back to the beginning of Birchas Kriyat Shema. And in the middle, we recited Kriyat Shema. So we're now in the aftermath of Kriyat Shema. We're in Emes V'Yatziv, but the chiddush is that Kriyat Shema is not a hefsek. And it still remains a bracha smuchal chavit, doesn't get a psif. Sheyesh mehen posech bebarach v'ein chosim bebarach v'yesh mehem shechosim bebarach v'eino posech bebarach. He says amongst these exceptions to the rule that you don't have both a bracha as a psicha and a bracha as a chasima, you can have one of the two. Either it starts with a baruch or it ends with a baruch. So, for example, in the short brachas, like Birchas HaMitzvos or Birchas HaNenim, you have a psicha with a bracha without a chasima. And in the bracha following Kriyat Shema Emes V'Yatziv, you'll have a chasima bracha to Hashem Gol Yisrael without a psicha, because you don't need a psicha, it's smucha l'cham. And then, Ve'atova meitiv. This is also an exceptional case of posech b'baruch ve'eno chosein b'baruch. Now, Hatova Meitiv was established in Yavne because of Haruge Beitar and the great miracle that happened with Haruge Beitar. And although it's the last of the brachas of Birkas Hamazon, bracha number 4, and it really should be a smuchal chavit, it should not open up in a brach, but they wanted to indicate that it's a separate entity, independent of the rest of Birkas Hamazon. And the thanks and the gratitude that we're expressing in this bracha is not the same. It's not generated by the fact that we're alive and we're eating the fruits of the land, etc. So therefore, this bracha of Hatova Meitiv in Birkas Hamazon is a bracha that opens with a baruch, but does not end with a baruch. Now we'll take a look at the top of Kuf Hey. Kasha le'ula. Ula, in the case of Havdalah, made it into a bracha. Sorry, Baruch Atah Hashem. There's no chasima. Now, where does that fit in the categorization of this brisa? It's neither a birchas mitzvah. It's no mitzvah over here, and it's not a birchas hanenin. He's not being nene. I mean, he may be nene from the reach of the besamim, but on that he has a separate bracha. We're talking about the bracha of Havdalah. Baruch hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol. Amalecha ula anami kibirchas hamitzvus dami. This should be subcategorized on the birchas hamitzvah. Not that it's a bracha on a mitzvah. No way, no how. But it has a certain similarity conceptually to birchas hamitzvah in the context of a psicha without a chasim. And the Gemara explains, birchas hamitzvah is my time. Why is it that there's no chasima in birchas hamitzvot? Mishum the hodah he. Hodah means it's one single hodah, and it's not a multi-themed bracha. When you have a multi-themed bracha, then you need a chasima. But if it's one theme, then you don't need both a psicha and a chasima. And hanami hodahi, so too birchas havdalah is one inyan. There's no hafsak in the middle. We don't add any bakashos, any tchinos, any divrei ritzui, and therefore it doesn't require a chasima. Fine. Now, just to add as we end for today, He says, Ein hi dome leberchas kiddush. How would Ula differentiate between Havdalah and Kiddush? And the answer is that in Kiddush, maskirim ba shvach HaShabbos, and therefore it's a multi-thematic brach. Or Birchas Yotzer Or, which we recite before Kriyat Shema, Yesh ba hefsek b'bakoshes tachnunim, Rachmecha Rabim Rachim Oleinu, or Birchas Avos has Divrei Ritzui. All these brachos are called aruchos, and they need a psicha and a chasima. But Birchas Havdalah is a bracha tzara. It's one theme rather than a hybrid of themes, and therefore all you need is a psicha without chasima. It's identical from that perspective to a Birchas Havdalah. Okay, then, so this is where we're going to stop. And Bli Neder, if we get a chance, we'll do Kofei somewhere between now and Sunday morning. And then we'll pick it up on Sunday on Af Kuf Vav. And I know, Jerry, you're leaving a few days later, but you'll remind me exactly what. All right. Have a great, great job. Thank you so much.